It's this is the plight of government, I think, is people in power don't like to have accountability. They don't like to have checks and balances, and so you have to fight for them. And so I've felt that this is my duty, like my civic duty, to do this. And people may not agree with it, but this is our only other chance left. Otherwise, the county can basically do whatever they want, and you can say nothing. So to me, this is fundamental to how the nature of our county government works.
So I'm here with James McCain, and James is fighting a court case right now in the state of Colorado that I think is interesting to the people of Colorado in general, and I wanted to get more eyeballs on that and for people to know what it is you're doing. James, do you want to just like give a overview first of what is this court case?
Sure.
And why do you see it as being relevant?
Right now, we have a court case in the district court in Delta to protect our right to referendum. And that is a constitutional provision that allows people of all jurisdictions in Colorado to put to vote any legislation that's passed. It's Article 5, Section 1, Clause 1 outlines that. We gave power to the General Assembly to make laws, but at the same time, we withheld the right to vote or disapprove or approve at the polls. So what was once a land use code issue is now about this fundamental constitutional right.
Okay. And review the early history of that, like, or I guess more recently, like when that petition actually started. How many signatures did you get, and what was the process around that?
So the county commissioners passed the update to land use code in February 2024. Based on the laws, the statutes, we have 30 days to approve a petition, circulate it, and then submit it back to the clerk. When we went to send the petition to the clerk, she told us that we did not have this right, that the counties don't have this right based on some court case. We all came together, and this disapproval happened twice. So they took 7 days, said, sorry, no, you don't have the right. We reworded the petition, submitted it back. They said, no, we told you, you don't have a right to referendum in the county. And at that point, after the second denial, we had about 7 days left before the 30-day time limit. And we all came together and decided that we should circulate the petition anyway because the clerk is making an error. And the reasoning behind that was because when you have a contract with somebody, say to redo a bathroom, and you know the homeowner's not going to pay, might not pay, right? You still have to finish the project in order to be able to take them to court, because otherwise there is no deal and you didn't perform. So you
need to hold up your end of the bargain.
Right. So based on that concept, we decided to circulate the petition anyway, and we had like a small team of people, and in 14 days in a county of 30,000 people, in 7 days in our county, we got 1,406 signatures. Then we resubmitted that to the clerk in the timeline under the 30-day limit, and they told us again, this is the final ruling, you don't have a right, we're not even going to accept the petition.
But now, if I understand this correctly, your understanding of the right to petition is based on the Colorado Constitution, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And the Colorado Constitution then specifies all these other jurisdictions within the state government, and it says you do have the right to petition within these other areas. Yeah,
so the Constitution reserves the right to veto all laws that the General Assembly passes, right? Except for emergency laws for the health and safety, like something in COVID, you wouldn't have the right to referendum for that. It then further reserves the right to referendum and initiative for all laws of special, local, and municipal legislation. And so the counties aren't specifically listed in the Constitution. And that's what this other court case they're citing was about initiatives where the people tried to, in Mesa County actually, the people tried to limit the housing growth to 1% per year through a process called initiative, which is very similar, where you write a law, you gather a petition, and you submit it based on like 5% of the population, and then you can pass your own laws for municipalities. So in that case, they said counties are excluded and we don't have this right to initiative. So they're using that law to reduce a different right. The referendum is a veto referendum. It's the right to veto, and counties aren't exempted from that. And so there's no, in our view, there's no way to make them exempt without a constitutional amendment. So we have this right. And then there's another, to get into it a little bit more.
But this, again, this is the Colorado state constitution.
Correct.
Where this is written. And in my understanding, the counties did not exist when the Constitution was written?
No,
is
the
that
counties
correct?
did exist, but they had no right to make laws.
Okay.
And so the way that happened, which is actually what I was going to say next, is in 1970 or 1967, the General Assembly made the Land Use Code Enabling Act. And at that time, they gave some of their power to make laws down to the counties and municipalities to make zoning. And so when they did that in the same statute or that same law, they said that this grant of power to the counties and municipalities does not limit any other power that has existed or has been exercised before. And so in the Constitution, the right to referendum is actually a reservation of power. And it says that this is a power that people retain to themselves to order a referendum vote, a veto referendum. So when they granted the power, they could not do that. They cannot grant a power that they did not have. So they can't give a counties the power to make laws that is not subject to vetoes or to checks and balances that they're already subject to. So
that's the basis by which you're arguing back and saying, even though counties were not explicitly written into the Constitution here, the state doesn't have the power to form a governing body that is not subject to the right of referendum.
Exactly. So our case right now is basically saying, did the clerk make an error denying this petition before we were completing the process, or did the General Assembly make an error and delegate powers to the county that's unconstitutional? So that's the question, and it's not really a lawsuit. It's actually just a judicial review.
Okay. Yeah. You're getting the courts to step in and clarify what does the Constitution mean in this case, and do the people have the right to referendum? Yeah,
and this is actually us exercising checks and balances, because the county has no other governing body to check its legislation. They've got no veto authority. There's no governor here to veto. So there really is no check and balance to the county. So our petition process and this request for judicial review is us trying to exercise checks and balances to this legislative power.
Right. Yeah, so in your words, like, why would this be relevant to the people of Colorado?
To me, I think that this is kind of a forgotten right of referendum, along with initiative. And initiatives are used more often, especially at the state level. But the power of referendum hasn't been exercised by the people at the state level since like 1932, from what I can tell. So we've kind of forgot that we have this right to hold our legislative people to check. And we can veto not only the entire bill, but some parts of the bill through this process. So to me, this is kind of a remembering that the people have some power here and that we don't have to necessarily wait or just allow all these laws to be passed that we don't agree with. We can actually check with all of us and see, hey, does this make sense? Or maybe we should bring this back to the drawing board.
Yeah, so you can form a petition, get the signatures, then bring the issue to vote, and essentially what you were attempting to do with the land use code is bring those changes to vote, which would say, do we want to repeal this? Do we want to cast this out and go back to square one where we were?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that kind of gets back to the point of like, why am I here? Why am I paying attention? How did we find this? So some history about the land use code, I guess, if we're ready to go into that. In 2018, the county government updated their master plan, and they had like 6 or 8 different county meetings where people would go in, we'd fill out questionnaires, we'd have discussions, and I personally attended at least 2 of those. And that was a good process. I didn't really like the outcome of what we got, but the process was very inclusive. We were all aware of it, we were participating. And during that process, from what I could tell, and from the frequently asked question flyer that the county produced, most people said, hey, we're okay with future land use planning as long as it's not zoning in disguise. And they had specifically stated that future land use planning will not be zoning in disguise. So we got the master plan updated. We all went back to our farming and our jobs, and nobody was really paying attention. The county says they immediately went to work on this new land use code. I can't prove that, but nobody was included. And then during the pandemic, they introduced a land use code that nobody really knew about. They chose not to send mailers to the people of the county, the landowners, property owners, because it was, quote, cost $6,500. So we didn't know that the land use code was going to be zoning. We didn't find out that this code was even existed until they went to update it in 2022. And at that time, the people kind of got aware. We joined together, and we went to a hearing, public hearing. There was 500, 600, 700 people there, including online.
What changed in that time period from 2018 to 2020, where the process seems to have changed, where they had a very inclusive process with gathering public input, and then that didn't happen in 2020? Do you have any idea, like, was that a change up of staff or of policy, or is there any apparent reason for that?
I mean, I assume part of the reason why we couldn't participate or didn't or weren't paying attention was because of COVID. So if they had planned for that process to start as soon as the master plan. Right, but it
seems like the actions that were taken were different too, in terms of like the level of notifications that went out and the active effort to engage the public.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speculate. I'm not certain, but it was zoning in disguise, and maybe, they were hoping that we wouldn't see, and it's very hard to get rid of a law once a law is in place. So from what I can tell, they paid for an outside consultant to put in this boilerplate code that didn't really work, and then they immediately had to update it. I'm not sure why they didn't include, maybe it was staff changes or just internal decision. I'm not.
Yeah, maybe we need to get somebody from the county office's perspective on that, like on what was happening internally there.
Yeah, it's a major change to our ability to do what we want on our property, and it's a slippery slope now because they can update this land use code with just a resolution, which is only one public hearing. If we're not paying attention, they can change this overnight. So this, to me, I moved to Delta County because it had no codes. I ran a renewable energy business in Iowa from 2007 to 2011, and I was fighting codes. I was writing land use codes. I was updating them. I was fighting the government to put solar on people's houses, and I decided I didn't want to fight to make a change or make a difference, and so I moved out here specifically because there was no codes. And to find out that had been changed without even being able to say anything was super upsetting to me. And so I joined the Alliance for Land Liberty to try to stop this. And I do want to say that we don't want no codes. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the Constitution. I believe that well-written laws are good. We are a society of laws. I think that we have a chance here in Delta County to make a land use code that is different from the boilerplate codes that the rest of the country uses, and that can really be an inspiration to the rest of the Colorado or just to us. And so I think that we, like, adopting this code is kind of akin to buying the last stocks of Enron. Like, to me, it's past solutions to problems that we don't have, and we have an opportunity to do something different and positive. So I think that what we've been asking for is to be included in this process and to write codes that can't be misinterpreted. Because the way it stands now, anybody with enough legal power could do whatever they want. So this is, to me, it's a right to harm by the people with money, and it's also can be used as a weapon against us.
What do you mean by that? Anybody with enough legal power could do harm here? So
what I've learned with the lawsuit now is that words matter and definitions matter, and our code is so vaguely defined, and it's so separately defined in different sections that somebody with a lawyer that was worth their salt could make the case that they have to pass any particular development, industrial, commercial, big ag. Like, it would be really hard for anybody in their community to stop something being developed in their area because the way the land use code is written, so vague, it's not very well defined.
Okay. So on the one hand, if somebody's trying to develop something, if they've got a really good lawyer, they could just try and define themselves in a certain way that they don't fall under certain jurisdictions, they don't fall under certain codes. And then on the other hand, if you had an aggressive lawyer that wanted to stop development, again, the more money and the more power there is going to likely be able to construe a framing of the situation where they could benefit from that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's kind of a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. And maybe this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen sometimes. And from what I know, if you have a big development that goes in, it's very hard to stop that if they meet the codes. And actually, the county could be sued if the people try to stop that. So this is not the best land use code. It can be a lot better if we just define our terms, for one. And then another really scary part, this is part and parcel of the reason I'm fighting this, is the land use code has grandfather clauses. They're not called that. They're called nonconformities, non-compliant conformities or something. And in that, they have penalties that can go up to $1,000 a day if you're out of compliance. And some of the ways you can come out of the compliance is if you're off your property for 12 months, everything can be considered no longer grandfathered, and now you can be fined $1,000 a day. Or if you change, expand, or intensify the use of your land, then all the rest of your grandfather clauses are nullified, and you could face $1,000 a day retroactively. They can force foreclosure of your property and take your land. And so they say they'd never use that. It's common in a lot of other land use codes. But if you're not going to use it, why is it there?
Yeah, so it feels like there's a lot of potential for weaponization here, whether it's acting from the county level or whether it's some other party who simply wants to weaponize the code for their own benefit, to get rid of a neighbor, or to maybe it's a land developer who wants to get rid of whoever's there now so they can move in and buy that property.
Yep.
Various reasons why people would weaponize the code.
And it does happen from time to time. If you look at the rest of the counties in this country, like, certain types of these things have happened, and you don't often hear about them because of legal ramifications of, defamation or slander. So we want to protect our county against that, and we have a really unique area out here, and a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that do creative things with their land for building purposes or for farming. And so we have an opportunity to make a land use code that's a beacon of hope, that's new, that inspires people to come here, that are in line with the values of the people here. So I think this is an opportunity for us to be better. Like, we don't have
what you're really looking for in that process, and what I'm looking for, and Nico Wolf, I know as well. I think what we're all looking for is for there to be more coordination with the people of Delta County, and hand in hand, let's work together to create a code that works for everybody.
Yeah.
And the feeling is just that process hasn't occurred
Yeah,
to sufficient
we've
degree.
We've tried everything. Like we've showed up to hearings, we've showed up to their meetings, we've petitioned, we've had specific meetings with our representatives, and they basically said sue us. That's kind of where we're at. So that leads us to this referendum petition, where we're like, okay, there's a process here where we can actually vote on this, which is what our campaign was: stop, repeal, and vote. We want to be included in this process. We offered to rewrite it, including the people of the county. So now we have to sue them. We had 28 days after they denied our petition to file this request for judicial review. And I personally called hundreds of lawyers, the ACLU, Institute of Justice, and nobody would represent us. And we had 2 firms that said they would. I didn't get a good feeling from them, and they quoted us $50,000 to $100,000. So rather than lose our rights because we weren't able to fundraise, 3 of us decided to do this lawsuit pro se. And so I've personally put in 300 hours that I've logged on this case, and right now we're waiting for the judge to respond to their motion to dismiss. So I can get into kind of how the case went.
Yeah. Where are we at right now?
So we filed the lawsuit in April. They immediately filed a motion to dismiss, which now that I think about it is kind of treating this like a normal case where you'd have damages and you were trying to get like some sort of remedy from the other party. We're just asking the judge to review actions from the executive. So I kind of feel like a motion to dismiss is improper. But anyway, that motion to dismiss was able to identify some errors in our initial complaint. And so we've spent 2 or 3 months fixing those errors. And every time you submit something, it takes 28 days. So every time you make a mistake and fix it, it takes another month. So in August, we finally filed our last fix. It's the 3rd amended complaint. And then they filed their motion to dismiss right after it. That process is then we have to respond and specifically argue with every objection they brought up. So we did that. And then they made a reply as of September 3rd. And at that time, as of September 3rd, the judge could have made a ruling at any time. And so we're waiting on that now, and it's October 6th.
And so it's the county that's the defendant in this case that's responding to your complaints. Is that correct?
It's just Terry Stevenson, the Delta County clerk, and the county has hired Holland Evans, which is not our county attorney, but one of the largest law firms in the state. So we are fighting one of the biggest law firms in the state to just try to get in front of the judge a request to review the actions of the clerk. So
who's paying for those lawyers?
Well, the county is, and vicariously through us. We are paying to fight ourselves.
Yeah, so the people are paying taxes to pay for a law firm that is defending the county from the right of referendum, from the people being able to bring an issue to vote.
Yeah, and actually even more so, they're trying to defend the executive. The county's somewhat of an executive branch. They're spending our money to defend themselves from being even reviewed by the judicial branch. So to me, this is they're trying to step past even the other check, because if the motion to dismiss is passed, we're going to have to appeal it. But they're basically saying there are no checks and balances, not even the judicial branch.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so important for them to fight this?
This is the plight of government, I think, is people in power don't like to have accountability. They don't like to have checks and balances, and so you have to fight for them. And so I've felt that this is my duty, like my civic duty, to do this. And people may not agree with it, but this is our only other chance left. Otherwise, the county can basically do whatever they want and you can say nothing. So to me, this is fundamental to how the nature of our county government works. And
then conversely, if this case wins, if you're vindicated in your approach to this, and the courts say that yes, indeed, the counties are subject to the right of referendum. Codes made at the county level are subject to that. Would it be codes, statutes? What does the county have the power to do? What is it technically called?
Technically, the county is a subdivision of the state, and they are here to administrate the county's duties. And they're required, I believe, to do road and bridges, to provide a jail and an office for the sheriff, and then just to conduct the business of the county. So they have that main role, and it's administrative in function.
When they form laws, so to speak, they're not actually laws. They're not state statutes. What are the county's dictates in terms of is it their policy? What do we call that?
Yeah, this has been a crash course in civics for me. So the county can make two types of law,
because
quasi-law.
The land use code itself falls into this category of it's not a state statute, but it does have authoritative power within this jurisdiction.
Yeah, so they have police power. So the counties have police power, which is akin to the executive branch. They can make administrative policy through a resolution, which is normally temporary policy matters like, hey, we're going to buy this property for now, or we're going to put this, modify this bridge, or we're going to give money to, X group for affordable housing or something. Those are resolutions, and that's policy. It's administrative in function, like buying and selling bonds. And then they also have the ability to make ordinances, which are legislation. That's long-term. It requires 2 public hearings versus the 1 for resolutions. And so they do have some grant of authority from the General Assembly to make legislation, to make law for the county. And those are typically done in ordinances. The strange part with the land use code, even though it's very permanent, is that the General Assembly has allowed counties to make it through resolutions instead of the ordinance process.
Okay.
So the land use code has actually absorbed previous ordinances like the junk ordinance, and there's a couple other ones that have been absorbed into this resolution. It's weird. So in my opinion, the counties have this broad governmental authority now that's executive, quasi-judicial, and quasi-legislative. And there's no checks and balances to it besides us.
So what does that mean, quasi-judicial, quasi-legislative? It means essentially it's kind of like Congress's authority to do these things, but it's not the same.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. I'm not sure. I know that it looks and seems like judicial. It looks and seems like legislation, but it's not exactly, because it doesn't have the rest of the checks and balances that you would have from normal legislation. So
okay, and again, going back to what you're doing here, part of what you're doing is to see, well, what checks and balances do we have available to us, and the people's right to referendum is potentially one of those.
Yeah, it's from my standpoint, as we've explored this, how do we provide a check and balance for the land use code? This is the only one that exists. Besides, lawyers who won't often take the case. So we have no other check and balance besides recall, and hoping that the next person you vote for will actually do the will of the people.
Which is a really slow process. So in the meantime, if your only recourse is a recall, and in the meantime, if the implementation of code is just proceeding normally, that's proceeding at a much faster rate than the people are allowed to respond, essentially.
Yeah, and funny enough, with a referendum, it's typically supposed to pause the law that is up for veto. And so the rest of the whole state If you put a veto petition together, the law is paused. Well, the county, because they said you don't have any rights, has operated with the land use code update that could be subject to veto. And then if we do get to vote on it, it will be vetoed. That's why they're putting up so much resistance. This is my opinion, but I don't see why they wouldn't just allow this. So the land use code has been operating, and they've been proceeding as though nothing else is going on.
But the other really interesting thing about this case to me is that if this were successful and the courts vindicate you in this, it's demonstrating that the people do have the right to referendum at the county level, and then that applies to all of Colorado.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And so now then we have a moment occurring where we've just had that validated that we do have that power, and the awareness is being raised. So it's a tool that, other counties could start using.
Yeah, it's a remembering. It's a modern tool of direct democracy. It's and they realized that early on when they made the Colorado Constitution that we should adopt initiative and referendum tools to help the people make laws if their jurisdiction wasn't through initiative, and to repeal laws or veto laws that they felt were out of line with their values. So to me, this is one way we can fix a lot of the problems that we're seeing that aren't being addressed. And so at the county level, when we win this case, which there's no way around it, either the counties don't have the right to make laws or we have the right to veto. It's any decision by the courts that's not that is totally opposed to the fundamental principles of our nation. It's opposed to the federal Constitution. It's against the act that allowed Colorado into the Union, which guarantees a Republican form of government, and it's completely against our Colorado Constitution, which the second article, besides boundaries, says that the will of the people was what creates the government, Article 2, Section 1. It's fundamental that we have the right to govern ourselves. So when we win this case, it means that we have the right to initiative and referendum for any authority that the county has been granted lawmaking purview. So it means that we can update our land use code through initiative. We can make laws through initiative if the county can make the laws, and we can veto anything that they do that's out of line. Mm-hmm. It could change the nature of how we view our role in county government.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole, the principle behind all of this is not that we want to abolish laws. It's that we want the laws to be accountable to the people who live here and pay taxes to that government.
Yeah. I mean, this is a form of accountability that the current administration doesn't want. It could be a great boon for Colorado, for Delta County, and for the 24 other states of the nation that also have initiative and referendum laws. We've forgotten our role here, and we, I'm getting into some philosophical stuff, but we've forgotten our role, and we don't participate except for every 4 years when we vote for the next leader, and they never seem to solve the problems that we actually need to solve. So rather than waiting, perhaps we should take a more active role. And, those leaders are there. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but we still have the ability to check that power. And that's what the whole thing of checks and balances is for. That's why we don't have a monarchy anymore. Our county seems to think that they have monarchical powers.
Or maybe they want that.
They would like that, yeah.
I don't know. You start to get into a contradictory position. Why are we fighting about the people's right to referendum? Right.
I don't see what it hurts. We could put it to vote in this November election. It would cost $0. It doesn't hurt to check in with their constituents to see if they are doing the will of the people. It makes zero sense to me, but I'm often find myself being rather optimistic and naive, and so I don't know.
What do you see as the sentiment of Delta County overall?
From the people? When I was doing petitioning, I ran into hundreds of people. I got 200 or 300 signatures myself, standing in front of our different businesses, talking to people, and I met 2 people that were for the land use code out of 1,000. Most people are absolutely against the code, or maybe they're somewhat for the code, but they were still totally in line with letting us vote on it. What's the harm? And the 2 or 3 people that I did that did say they supported the code, I asked them why, and they said the junk is the problem. Well,
junk ordinances and having neighbors that are storing up piles of junk on their property.
Right, which is a law that's already on the books.
Yeah.
It's an ordinance that's already there that wasn't being enforced. So we don't need the land use code to clean up the junk. We already had a law for that.
Yeah. And what do you think is the overall awareness of the land use code changes, awareness that this right to referendum lawsuit is happening? What's the overall awareness in the county right now?
Very low. I talk to people every once in a while that don't even know there's a land use code. I talk to people, a lady the other day who said that she thought that we won when we showed up and with 700 or 800 people in the first hearing.
February of last year.
February of 2023.
Yep.
2 years ago. She thought that the postponing of the update, which is all they did, was actually the canceling of the code.
No.
So most people have no idea what's going on, and we're finding it very difficult to get the word out.
What do you think could improve that?
The High Country Shopper did do an article, so that helps. But the media, like
when I was sharing some pamphlets and flyers with local business owners when I first got involved with the land use code, and I had the same response that you did. Overwhelmingly, when people realized what I was talking about, they were interested. Then they were outraged that it was going on. Then they were like, "I need to make 10 more copies of that. I need to tell all my friends, and we need to get there.
Yeah.
We need to show up." So, yeah, for sure. Like the sense that I have is that people are interested in having an influence on their government and in being represented there in the process. It's completely a lack of awareness problem.
Yeah, totally. So if people want to get informed, they can go to a4ll.org, which is our website. We created a 501c4 to help bring awareness and accountability to government. You can go there and go to the bottom of the page and sign up to the newsletter. Right now, it's an all-volunteer organization. Almost all of us are farmers, so in the summertime, we could use some more help with getting the word out, with doing stuff like you said, getting boots on the ground and flyers out. But most of our activity seems to come in the winter time. So hopefully next couple months we get a frost, we'll see the farmers start to come off their fields and we can do a little bit more work. So if you want to go there, there's also a donate button. You can donate to the cause if you can't do anything else. But it looks like it's up to us to do most of this work. And it's been just a few of us doing a lot of this work.
Well, I feel like we need to get to know each other more in the county as well. There's a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of networks of people in different areas of the county, and we need to connect more and be more aware of each other so there are better information streams.
Yeah.
One of the things, you have a mailing list, right? Mm-hmm. So we can start to put out more regular updates and at least keep people in the loop about how things are progressing.
Yeah, we're actually debating with doing like a paper newsletter, and we need a little bit more people, a little bit more funding. But we're thinking about doing like paper copies because we're finding that Facebook and other social medias are somewhat censoring maybe some of the content we're putting out. So we're in this weird filter bubble, and using typical channels like social media is proving problematic. So we're thinking about going back to, like you said, just getting to know each other, getting public meetings, potlucks, paper newsletters, paper flyers and stuff. So that's right in line with, I think, what we need to do to connect. And about the connection part, one of the beautiful things about this whole process has been over the last couple of years, I've seen people come together on all sides of the political aspect, because we're talking about fundamental issues here. And it turns out most of us have very same values, whether you're Republican or Democrat. We're all the same, especially in Delta County. We're all dealing with water issues, and so it's been uniting.
Well, and it's about the right to autonomy. It's about the right to property use. It's about not having your rights taken away from you out the back door, which is what happens when you buy property and you expect it to be able to use it in a certain way. The value of the property rests in that.
Yeah.
When a land use code is implemented and you're not consulted on it, the use, the utility, and therefore the value of your property is being diminished by that without compensation.
Yeah, and actually, there's court cases that say zoning is a taking of land of property rights. So no matter how you cut it up, we lost our rights without notification, which I believe is legally challengeable in court. But we've chosen to go this other route, which was easier. And turns out that when we win this court case for referendum, it has ramifications that are beyond just the county messing up with the land use code. It prevents them from doing that or making those kind of mistakes again.
Gives the people a lever to respond and say, no, that wasn't implemented in our interest.
Yeah, totally. I really think that this is, I just couldn't not do this. It's something that's very meaningful to me. Like, this is my civic duty. It's something that I could, when we win this, I'll be super proud for the rest of my life,
So what do you hope to see happen culturally in Delta County in the next, let's say in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think if we win this, the people can feel like there's hope again. Like we're actually providing, the mantra of hope and change. We could
but
have,
not from an outside entity, but
from us.
Securing that we the people have the rights.
Yeah, it's a remembering of our power here and remembering of our responsibility. Like, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like Spider-Man, or is it Batman?
Spider-Man, yeah.
So I think that most people are like, oh, what can we do? Oh, it's corrupt. We all know it's corrupt. What's the point? What can I as one person do? This just blows all that old way of thinking out of the water. Like, we really have all the power here. And these people that are doing our will and we're electing, they're accountable to us and we're watching. So this, to me, is it could at least provide a mechanism to fix a lot of our problems that we're dealing with. We can't do this federally, but in Delta County, the federal stuff really doesn't affect us. It's really all about what our county's doing, what our state's doing. And so if we can remember these forgotten powers that the people hold, it could be a pathway to remedy a lot of these issues.
Yeah. Well, I'll say what I'm hoping to see, culturally happen here is more and more connection between people, and that we can, as you said, find common ground.
Yeah.
We're trying to take care of our families and our loved ones. We want peace and prosperity and resilience for the county.
Yeah.
If we can come together around those values and then start to have conversations about, well, how do we get there? Right? What are the levers we can pull? What are the mechanisms that we can use to get there? I'm hoping that we can enter into a positive conversation and, have hope for a way forward.
Yeah.
The tools are important, but it's also important that we, the people, start to have a vision and start to have a sense of agency that we can shape our own destiny here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's super important. How can somebody who lives in Delta County represent us when we don't know what we all want. So it's not always the fault of the people who are in office. We don't give them the vision and direction and understanding in order to do what we want, right? So you're exactly right. Like if we can start coming together and talking about the fundamental things that we agree on and maybe identifying some problems that we want to fix, then we can start making solutions. Because when we've been...
So it's about we, the people, getting organized, right?
Yeah, totally.
To overcome that. We need to get organized. And then as individuals, we need to take responsibility for overcoming the differences between us. Reach out to that person who's, on the other side of the political aisle, or, you're a farmer, that person lives in Delta City proper. They have a different lifestyle, they have a different perspective than you. But reach out and see if you can find the common ground, because it's no one else's responsibility to do that for us.
Right, and nobody is going to.
Yeah, we can't wait for our government to do that for us. What they're going to end up representing is they're going to end up representing lobbyists, and there's a reason for it. Those interests have actually coordinated and have come up with a coherent direction.
And they're very well organized.
Yes. So if a politician has to choose between, hearing an organized signal and responding to that versus, what truly might be chaotic and a bunch of, polarized, everybody wants something different.
Yeah.
That polarization is going to lose the battle to get their viewpoints represented.
Yeah, 100%. And
so if we take responsibility for that, if we begin to coordinate and organize ourselves, we will begin to have more influence over our government.
Yeah, and one thing that I keep thinking about is if you were to rank everybody's values, if they were to sit down and when they're having a disagreement about politics, to say, hold on a second, what do we actually value? It's food, water, shelter, energy, place to work, and some free time to be able to do what you want.
Yeah,
that's pretty much everybody. So if we can kind of start there, we can unite and start actually solving these problems. So that's what I think, back to the referendum, that's what I think this could be the beginning of that. And I don't see how we lose this case. And I don't see how the county continues to fight this case if people start to understand what's going on. Why not let the judge just review it? Why continue to put up all this costly litigation? Just let the judge review it. What's the harm? If you're right, what's the harm? Why hire that most expensive lawyer? Why not have the county attorney represent this? We're already paying his salary.
Yeah.
So that, to me, makes me feel like we have already won.
Yeah, the situation speaks for itself. And, what we need to do, I think, is just continue to make people aware that this is happening. The more eyes we can get on it, I think people will realize that it's important to all of us.
Yeah.
This is a fight for the people.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better.
Thank you so much,
No
James,
problem.
for doing what you're doing. And I really hope to see that, forming, that we have communities gelling here, people coming from all walks of life and getting to know each other and finding common ground.
Yeah.
I hope that happens, and I think that's possible here.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a good nightcap on the discussion there. That's really, yep. Thanks.
Well, great. Thank
Sweet.
you.
You're welcome.